I'm very glad to be among you today, and thank you, Dr. Siriopoulou, for inviting me in this conference. I think we all share a great interest in understanding the developmental trajectory of language in children and ways to assist them with the challenges they face. So I would present an overview of a language assessment that we developed for young Greek children, share some of the data we have collected as we piloted and we normed it, and then we study the psychometric properties of this test. And I will attempt to describe ways to use it in our educational practice with children with ASD. As you know very well, we have a great deal of evidence today showing that children's early progress in learning, and particularly in learning to read, depends to a large extent on their language skills. It's quite crucial to profit from this knowledge and to develop valid and reliable predictors for early identification of at-risk children, and especially predictors that are linked to effective interventions. Today, we know that well-organized and executed programs, intervention programs, have positive effects that last in time. The development of the norm-referenced digital tool called Logometro was directed by the need for a comprehensive language assessment tool in our language for children in preschool and early primary school years. And this assessment could form the basis for valid and reliable screening of risk, as well as diagnostic decisions. More specifically, Logometro has been designed in order to map individual language development paths, as well as difficulties the children face, to provide a descriptive profile of children's oral language and emergent literacy skills. And, excuse me, I should go to the previous one. And to assist the identification of children who are at risk for developmental language disorder or specific learning disabilities. Now, as you know, for children with ASD, it's highly important to carry out differential diagnosis in order to distinguish ASD among other disorders with similar characteristics. An example could be semantic pragmatic language disorder or even developmental language disorder. Most well-known assessment tools, language assessment tools, such as the SELF-5 or the preschool language scale, usually focus upon one or more language subcomponents, as is phonology, vocabulary knowledge, narration, morphology, and pragmatics. Logometro has been designed to provide a holistic profile that utilizes all language subcomponents. Because we know that most of the screening batteries for clinical assessment are lengthy and they are time-consuming, they often require highly trained examiners, and usually that creates problems with the cost and the time required. We have decided to develop an assessment battery that is child-friendly and is administered with mobile devices, with tablets. Logometro is administered through an Android application and has been developed especially, the application has been developed especially for this test in order to provide the participating children with a familiar and an attractive way to complete the assessment. So it was carefully designed and constructed according to our detailed specifications in order to incorporate all task directions with the proper voicing and this proper sound articulation, to include plenty of practice examples, and of course to provide proper feedback for the children. The application was developed utilizing child-friendly graphic designs that were developed especially for each language task. And the touch screens enable direct recording of the children's responses, oral responses, and they also record the manual responses, which are the choices that the children make on the screen. The application also applies automatically the ceiling rules for each task and calculates scoring. After the assessment, the language samples are uploaded to a parallel application, web-based. Logometer has been designed to cover a wide range of language skills for children at the ages of 4 to 7, and includes 24 different tasks grouped into 6 main oral language domains. These are the semantic knowledge, listening comprehension, narrative skills, pragmatic competence, phonological awareness, and morphological awareness, and as well as 2 tasks for emergent literacy. All language domains are assessed through several tasks that combine both receptive and expressive modalities. For example, the score for semantic knowledge, the semantic knowledge domain, combines the child's achievement on 3 different tasks, 1 receptive and 2 expressive. All of these tasks that I just mentioned are presented in a fixed order that has been set in order to keep the child's interest high, to maintain the child's engagement, and to minimize fatigue. When scoring is completed, then the application produces automatically a report like the one that is shown here, that provides in a graphic form a total index of the overall language development, as well as detailed specific scores for each of the language domains that has been assessed. For evaluating logometer psychometric properties, we use data from 800 children, with complete data coming from our wider. These were the complete data coming from a wider normative sample, as you see on the table. And these children came from 4 different geographically dispersed areas of Greece: Attica, Thessaly, Macedonia, and Crete, and were representative. They were a representative proportion of socioeconomic backgrounds. Children participating in the study had written consent from their parents or guardians, and the study protocol was approved by the Greek Ministry of Education and the Research Ethics Committee of the University of Crete. In order to evaluate logometer's construct validity, we performed a confirmatory factor analysis, and the results indicated that the 4-factor structure, correlated structure, describes best the latent language skills of young children. And this finding confirms conceptualization of our language domains for this particular age group, as has been found in other studies, in previous studies in other languages as well. Test reliability of logometer was assessed with 33 children during 2 consecutive visits in a 2-week interval. And Pearson correlation analysis was conducted on the test and retest scores, and the results showed that retest reliability of each subscale was between 0.73 and 0.96. Finally, on this table, you see the omega estimates for listening comprehension, vocabulary knowledge, narration, graphophonemic awareness, and morphological awareness. Since these are the constructs verified by the model emerged by the confirmatory factor analysis. The omega coefficients results indicate acceptable internal consistency reliability for all 4 constructs of the logometer. Also, convergent validity. In order to assess it, we use a series of other standardized tests, and then we perform bivariate correlations between, for example, the receptive vocabulary test for Greek elementary students, which is the brief Greek version of the PPVT. The naming task from Logometro was compared with a standardized test of expressive vocabulary by Voginidroukas, and the definition task from Logometro was correlated to the same construct from the Greek standardization of WIPSI. These estimates, as you see, the Pearson R's were significantly positive between all pairs, but they were not extremely high, so that they would not indicate overlap at the level of duplicating essentially the other measures without any additional information. Now, I would like to share with you a few logometer tasks that are of special interest for differential diagnosis or progress monitoring in children with ASD. Today, we know that the vast majority of children with ASD have linguistic difficulties and pragmatic deficits, and these are all seem to be present even in individuals with ASD, but they're high functioning. And they are often related to difficulties in semantics. The semantic assessment in Logometro is completed through a receptive vocabulary task. And on this task, each child is presented with 4 different images, and the child is asked to choose the right image that best represents the word that is given. On this example, the child is given the word horse, and there are 3 distractors, and we have pictures of a shark, a frog, and a bird. And I would add here that these words were very carefully selected from published lists of common vocabulary for children of this age. And our word choices were validated during our extensive pilot study. The pragmatic task is another interesting task that has been adapted by the pragmatics profile of everyday communication skills in children by Dewart and Summers, and invites children to answer questions that accompany illustrated scenarios. And I should add here that this is the only task for assessing pragmatic competence that has been normed in Greek population, in Greek children. And it uses pictures that are showing common social situations. And we give the child a brief description, and we ask the child to generate a response for one of the characters that are shown in the picture. On this example, we see a boy in a dentist's office, and he's showing his mouth. The child is asked, what do you think the boy is saying to the doctor, to the dentist? The child's response then is recorded by the device and is scored according to the elements that the child provides, the richness of the expression, and other criteria. We have according to the literature, previous evidence shows that tasks that elicit language production through the proper pictorial materials could prove more useful than using simple narratives that we usually do in our practice. All scenarios that we have used in Logometro were developed using child-friendly pictures, familiar experiences for these age groups. For example, eating lunch with a parent or going to bed. And the questions were validated during, as I said before, extensive pilot. And we were looking to assess the following aspects of pragmatics. First of all, context and interpretation, which refers to comprehension and interpretation of the communicative situation that is presented in the picture. Then is the communicative intent that relates to intention or ability to communicate. And finally, the proper response according to context, which is which assesses interactional skills related to the contextual variation. However, I should add here that pragmatic language is very difficult to assess for several reasons. We don't have time to discuss this now. Because of this, in order to make a formal diagnosis for pragmatic language disorder, for example, an evaluation of pragmatic language should include careful individual assessment that combines both informal and observational measures, along with a battery of receptive and expressive language tests, such as the ones that we have used in Logometro. Pragmatic language is a critical part of everyday language communication and is related to social skills, learning, to literacy skills, especially in school-age children, and improvement of deficits in communication and social competency can also enhance child's self-image and the child's sense of belonging in a family or in a peer group. For children with ASD, improving their pragmatic language and social interaction are vital components of their program, their educational program. And we have reasons to believe that Logometro could assist greatly to this regard. And we're working on finding ways to evaluate this claim some more. For more information, there is a specific, there are certain studies that we have published the last few years based on our exploratory research for investigating psychometric qualities and, of course, clinical applications. And I will be glad to provide you any more information you need. Thank you.